Hello, my name is Charlotte. Today I'm going to show you some interesting facts about cells. First, let's look at the organelle called mitochondrion. This is what it looks like. Let's look at how mitochondria are important to your body's health. Your mitochondria are important to your body's health because they create energy for your body. To do this, your mitochondria takes the electrolytes from your food together with the oxygen you breathe and repackages it inside a complex internal structure to make water. During this complex process, adenosine triphosphate, ATP, is created. ATP is basically the energy currency and it supplies the energy in your body. What would happen if this cell stopped working? Your whole body would not work! Let me explain. Your body needs energy. Without it, you could not survive. Do you see why mitochondria are so important now? Here's an example of an animal cell. This is a red blood cell. Now, let's take a closer look at red blood cells. They are formed in the bone marrow, live for typically 120 days, then die. They can also get carbon dioxide and bring it to your lungs for you to exhale. Did you know that on average, males can have up to 5 million red blood cells per cubic millimeter and females up to 4.5 million? Here's an example of a plant cell. This is a mesophyll cell. Mesophyll contains two main minerals, palisade and parenchyma. Palisade contains a high number of chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are cells that help the plant perform photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the process that converts the light from the sun into sugars that fuel the plant. Okay, so what do both of these cells have in common? Red blood cells and mesophyll cells have very little things in common because they are very different cells. However, they both have an outer cell membrane, radices, and cytosol. There's one main difference between a plant and animal cell. First, let's look at a plant cell. Plant cells have a protective wall called a plant cell wall. It makes sure the plant has stability and structure. This is an animal cell. It doesn't have a cell wall because it doesn't need structure like a plant. An animal cell has a cell membrane to keep the cell safe. It also helps the cell lock onto key nutrients. Now, let's take a good look at the overall differences and similarities between a red blood cell and a mesophyll cell. Wait, why are these cells important to your overall health?
Created using Powtoon.
The nucleus is a small spherical organelle found in most eukaryotic cells. It is the control center of the cell. It contains the genetic information for the cell and tells other organelles what to do and become. Inside of the nucleus is the nucleolus, which produces ribosomes. The nucleus tells the ribosomes how to assemble and produce proteins to go to other parts of the cell or to parts of an organism. Why is it so important, you might ask? Well, the nucleus is responsible for information storage, retrieval, and duplication. If there is a malfunction in the nucleus, genetic material can be damaged, causing abnormalities or diseases. A neuron, or nerve cell, transmits information in the form of electrical impulses to another part of a body. Neurons are the basic building blocks of the nervous system. They help with receiving, processing, and transmitting information received from receptors coming from one part of an organism to another. The three main components of a neuron are the cell body, or soma, dendrites, and an axon. The soma consists of cytoplasm and a nucleus. Dendrites extend out from the cell body and pick up impulses from receptors. The impulse travels along the axon and then gets passed on to another neuron through a junction called a synapse. The impulse then travels from neuron to neuron until reaching the brain or spinal cord. Phloem is a part of a transport system in plants. It is responsible for transporting sugars, proteins, and other organic molecules in plants. Phloem tissue is composed of sieve tubes, companion cells, phloem fibers, sieve elements, and phloem parenchyma. They tend to be long and elongated. They are permeable on both ends and join from cell to cell. This forms a two-way flow of water and nutrients, usually sucrose, a type of sugar. Sucrose comes from leaves and travels through a companion cell to get to the phloem, eventually reaching the roots or another part of an organism. In trees, phloem is the innermost layer of bark. They both transport something. There are many of them working together for one purpose in an organized manner, and they both join from cell to cell. In plants, we might consider phloem cells as the counterparts or equivalent to neurons. Phloem sap is also thought to play a role in sending informational signals throughout vascular plants, much like how neurons send information via electrical impulses. Phloem is a tissue comprised of multiple cells, whereas neurons are cells consisting of organelles. Neurons and phloem both have very different functions. Phloem transports water and nutrients around a plant, where neurons transmit information to other parts of the body, meaning that neurons can respond to stimulation much more quickly than phloem and therefore plants. Without phloem, plants wouldn't have circulation of water and nutrients and would die. Without neurons, animals wouldn't be able to respond or interact with the world around them. They wouldn't be able to feel, touch, taste, and so on.
The nucleus is one of the larger organelles found inside most cells, though in some cells, prokaryotes, like the red blood cell, there is no nucleus. It is usually a spherical shape and is commonly located near to the center of the cell. The nucleus is responsible for regulating cellular growth and metabolism. It also stores and maintains the cell's DNA for both replication and transcription, in addition to housing the nucleolus, which creates ribosomes for the cell. The nucleus is encased in a porous phospholipid double membrane. The inner nuclear membrane has a mesh of lamin proteins on its lining, which provide the nucleus structural support. This nuclear envelope is responsible for the separation of the cytoplasm and the nuclear contents. Pores on the envelope allow for the import and export of materials to and from the nucleus. It houses a web-like substance called chromatin. This substance contains the proteins and DNA that reside within the nucleus. When it comes time for the cell to split, the chromatin will form into rod-shaped chromosomes. These chromosomes then carry DNA molecules allowing for successful mitosis. The nucleus is a very important part of the cell, as it stores all the blueprints for everything the cell might ever want to make or do. The nucleus also stores all the cell's knowledge of how and when it should do things. Without it, unless there was no nucleus beforehand, or if it became damaged, the cell would inevitably die, unable to perform a mitosis. Motor neurons, otherwise known as nerve cells, are responsible for transmitting impulses from your central nervous system to the body's muscles and glands. Most motor neurons are multipolar. These neurons consist of a soma, or cell body, dendrites, and an axon, which is encased in a myelin sheath. The cell body houses all of the necessary components of a cell, like the nucleus, ribosomes, mitochondria, DNA, and so on. If the cell body gets damaged, the cell will most likely die. Another interesting thing to note is that neurons are actually some of the oldest cells in our body, and once they die, they are gone for good. Dendrites are the listeners of the cell. They receive the messages from other cells and then pass that message on to the soma, which in turn sends electromagnetic impulses down the axon, which then sends the message out to the body. The axon is encased in myelin sheaths because they make the transmission faster. Guard cells are specialized plant cells that are responsible for regulating the oxygen and water levels. To do this, they open or close stomatal pores in the leaf's epidermis. They do this by changing the turgor pressure within themselves, which is done by large movements of potassium ions and sugar, moving either in or out of the cell. When a guard cell pressurizes or becomes turgid, it opens the stoma. When a guard cell is depressurized or flaccid, the stoma is closed. When a plant performs photosynthesis, it uses its chloroplasts, which contain chlorophyll. During photosynthesis, the plant also creates excess oxygen. A guard cell must let that oxygen exit, and then take in carbon dioxide whilst preventing the plant from becoming dehydrated. Guard cells can also prevent a plant from completely drowning with their amazing ability to absorb excess water, which then opens the stoma. After enough water has transpired, the guard cells will become flaccid and the stoma will close. Despite their roles and functions being completely different, neurons and guard cells have three organelles in common: a nucleus, mitochondria, and a cell membrane. These cells are drastically different in both their function and form. A neuron is a multipolar nerve cell to transmit electromagnetic impulses to muscles and glands, and a guard cell is an oblong plant cell that regulates transpiration and oxygen and carbon dioxide intake and outtake. These cells are both vital to the life of their respective organisms. If we had no motor neurons, we would essentially become an inanimate object, not capable of sensing or moving anything. We would eventually die. If a plant had no guard cells, it would either drown or starve to death quite quickly.
Cells by Fletcher Day. The nucleus is one of the most important organelles in a cell. It controls and regulates the activities of the cell, like growth and metabolism. This is a photo from the Florida State University where the nucleus is stained red. The nucleus is generally a sphere shape around the center of the cell, but can come in all shapes and sizes. The nucleus has four main parts: the nuclear envelope, the nuclear pores, nucleoplasm, and last but not least, the nucleolus. The most important is the nuclear envelope. This is a double-layered membrane that separates the contents of the nucleus from the cellular cytoplasm. This is a good image because you can clearly see all parts of the nucleus and the cytoplasm. The envelope is riddled with holes called nuclear pores that allow specific types and sizes of molecules to pass back and forth between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. The nucleus is vital for a healthy cell. The nucleus stores most of the cell's DNA, and so without it, it wouldn't have any structure or be able to live. Without a nucleus, a cell can't live. And without cells, an organism can't live. And without organisms, the world can't live. And so the whole universe lies on the nucleus. hence why the nucleus is considered one of the most important organelles. If the nucleus were to stop functioning, all eukaryotes would not exist. The nucleus carries most of the DNA in the cell, and so the cell would need to create another storage organelle, which can't happen. Henceforth, why all cells that need one have a nucleus. Red blood cells are round with an indented center. They generally live for 120 days. The function of the red blood cell is to carry oxygen around the body. The red blood cell contains hemoglobin that helps them store oxygen. The red blood cell contains no nucleus so that there is more room to carry oxygen. There are some 5.2 million red blood cells per cubic millimeter of the blood in the adult human. The xylem is a very important cell. It contains two parts, tracheids and vessel elements. Tracheids are long and narrow, and vessel elements are shorter and wider. It is used to convey water around the plant. The xylem provides support and is a storage device in most vascular plants. The red blood cell and xylem are very interesting because their jobs are quite similar. One conveys oxygen and the other conveys water. This is an important connection. Though red blood cells and xylems have nothing else in common, they share the function in their kingdom. The red blood cell and the xylem are also quite different. They share no visual similarities, but some organelles are different. The xylem has two organelles, but the red blood cell has none. Neither have very complicated cells, as they are very similar. Both cells are important for the organism as both convey items. If oxygen or water aren't conveyed around the cell, the organism can't grow and flourish. Animals need oxygen to breathe, and plants need water to grow. Without these cells, the organism dies.
Cells are vital for any living thing in our world. They are said to be the basic building block of all organisms. And did you know there are approximately 37.2 trillion cells in the human body? The definition of the general animal cell is it is a very large cell with a nucleus and specialized structures called organelles. They are also eukaryotic cells. There are many organelles included in the general animal cell, such as the cell membrane. This is a layer of semi-permeable thin fat and protein that surrounds the cell. Next is the cytoplasm. This is a jelly-like material outside the nucleus. Here is the Golgi apparatus. It is responsible for producing the membranes that surround the lysosomes. Lysosomes. These organelles contain digestive enzymes. This is called mitochondria. It converts stored energy in glucose into ATP for the cell. Next we have the ribosomes. They are sites of protein synthesis. The endoplasmic reticulum is placed here. There is both rough and smooth ER. The rough ER transports materials through the cell and produces protein. Also included in the smooth ER, it contains enzymes and produces digestive lipids and membrane proteins. We then have the vacuole. It fills with food being digested and waste materials that's on its way out of the cell. Finally, we have the nucleus. Now let's have a closer look at it. Animal cells always have a nucleus. It contains things such as genetic material. The nucleus consists of a nuclear envelope, chromatin, and nucleosis. Chromatin contains a cell's DNA and condenses down to chromosome as a cell divides. The nuclear envelope is made up from two membranes and encloses the content of the nucleus. The nucleolus is the center core of the nucleus. Some things the nucleus is responsible for are the function of protein synthesis and it produces organelles called ribosomes. Because the nucleus is so important, if the nucleus were to be damaged, the genetic makeup would be damaged too. Also, the cell would lose control of the function that regulates cell division. Now that we know a little more about the nucleus, let's explore another cell. The sperm cell is the male reproductive cell. When combined with other reproductive cells, they produce a new organism called an embryo. The main function of the reproductive cell is to pass on biological information required to produce a new organism. Sperm cells carry X and Y chromosomes that determine the gender of the future offspring. They consist of three main parts: head, middle portion, tail. The head mainly consists of the nucleus. Covering the head is the acrosome, which contains enzymes that help the sperm cell enter an egg. Next, there is the middle portion, which contains the mitochondria. Then there is the tail, which is sometimes called the flagellum. This is a slender hair-like bundle of filaments. The tail gives the sperm cell movement. In comparison, there is a plant cell like the mesophyll, which is found in plant leaves. In the mesophyll, palisade parenchyma are evident. These have many chloroplasts in them, which is why they are the main sites for photosynthesis. There is usually one layer of these cells, and they are located under the epidermis. Epidermis is a waxy protective coating on top. Below the layer of palisade parenchyma is the spongy mesophyll, which makes up the rest of the leaf. Finally, at the very bottom is the guard cells and the stoma. Similarities between the animal and plant cells are cytoplasm, ribosomes, mitochondria, endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi apparatus, and microtubulus, and the nucleus are all present in both plant and animal cells, whereas the cell wall, chloroplast, and plastids are only present in animal cells. There are a few additional structures found in plant cells. Also, plant cells can be larger than animal cells.